Alright, hey everybody, welcome back to Ascending with Ashley. I'm Ashley. Let's talk about sex, okay? I am being called to make this video. I am just going to make it, and here we go. It came up in the self-love reading that I did earlier today, to engage in self-love practices, if you know what I mean, okay? Versus having sex with other people. And I wanted to go ahead and make a video about this, because this is something that I think is really important to coming into consciousness, quite frankly. And I'm going to explain why. When you have sex, sex is something that can tie you or like create cords with other people. It's the deepest kind of energy exchange, right? And so when you have sex out of a place of anger or frustration or revenge on someone else, you know, or just simply out of lust and wanting, you know, that very primal instinct, it's not necessarily a bad thing for the primal thing, but if you're doing it for other reasons, right? And this is for all kinds of sex. I don't care what kind of sex you're having, how many partners you have, any of it. I'm just talking about the act of sex, okay? Nothing else, you know, I'm not talking about hetero, all of it. We're talking about all sex. So sex is a sacred energy exchange. And it is very, if the sacredness of it isn't being acknowledged and it's just, you know, wham bam, thank you ma'am kind of thing, it can have implications for you and the other person that you're in, or people that you're engaging in sex with. Now, I myself have been celibate for a very long time. Like, I don't engage in sex at all. I have never really been a very sex-centered person. I was for a little while in my 20s, because I was in that, like, superficial, trying to find someone, very ruled by the patriarch and, you know, what porn promotes, right? Like, women are sex objects. I myself believe that to be true of myself, at that point in time. And I think it's just a really common thing for people in our society to use as another form of self-regulating, quite frankly. But that's why I want to talk about it, because the sacredness of sex has really, it's not really existent, especially at, like, just regular folk, right? You know, the porn industry, we're talking about the exploitation of women predominantly. Not to mention just the underlying, like, human trafficking that goes into the porn industry, and, you know, the rule of pimps and men taking charge over women. All of that is ill, right? But let's specifically talk about what sacred sex looks like. Sacred energy exchange is called tantric sex, which is this acknowledgement of both people or everybody involved in the sex, the energy, right? Open communication. And I just think it's important that the reason I'm coming on here is what came up in the self-love reading today was like, hey, you should masturbate instead of, like, engaging in sex with other people. That came up in the reading. And so I wanted to get on here and talk to you about what it's like when you don't engage in sex, because I know it's not a very common thing. I think it's more common now. Lots of women are in this moment celibate because of, you know, laws against our bodies, the partners available, we've been cheated on, whatever the reason for celibacy. It's an acknowledgement of, no, sex can be more sacred than I was participating in it and before, and I don't want to do that anymore, right? Not to mention there's kind of like some big outbreaks and shit happening all over the country. I'm just talking about some of the reasons that people are celibate. I'm celibate personally because I only wanted one child, and I have no need to have sex with anybody right now. I also don't know anyone like that, that I would feel even comfortable having sex with at this time in my life. You know, I'm solo bolo for the most part right now, and lots of single moms are, again, as a form of protection for our children, right? Like not bringing any strange people into our homes. You know, it's a safety measure, right? So anyway, the acknowledgement, like when and if you have sex at a sacred ass energetic level, like when both partners have orgasms together, when you're both acknowledging, when there's open communication, if that's the sex you're having, congratulations, because that's not common. You don't need to be here for this video. I'm talking about people who are like, use sex as like a form of, you know, just like whatever. That can be really toxic, and I want to talk about this. I had an analogy come up in my marriage when I found out that baby daddy was cheating on me, and I told him, I'm like being a woman and having a person enter your body is very different than men experiencing sex, right? Being a woman and experiencing sex is very different than men, and I think we just don't really have, I'm very uncomfortable talking about this just because I'm not a prude, but I don't have sex at all. But like I remember telling him, like, it's like you're walking into a house like without knocking, you're like barging into the house, right? It was an analogy that at the time I could communicate with him, and I feel like that's just, again, the patriarch conditioning, the porn industry, you know, that's even Hollywood, right? Like I watched 50 Shades of Grey not too long ago because I have Netflix now, and even just that is like, it was such a violent, you know, like she was submitting so much, but like there was very little like conversation about energy, you know, because it's Hollywood. So I just want to remind you that like all of that shit perpetrates violence against women, and if you're using sex in a way to just, you know, release, right, whatever, you can do that by yourself. When I was in my early 20s, I used to work I was doing like, it's like a pyramid scheme, but pure romance, and it is like sex toys. I used to sell them and like have parties for women, and we would talk about like sex hygiene and information and, you know, our sex lives, and we would sell sex toys to women and talk about the importance of women knowing what they like before interacting with another partner, right? And I think that oftentimes women are just seen as these vessels of pleasure, right? And that's so not good. That's not gonna make good sex. Also, there's just this like long-standing joke within our society about like men not knowing where the clit is. That's absolutely embarrassing. I had a conversation with a man a few months ago, and he said something, he's a married man, and he said something to me about how the clit moves, and I like started laughing at him, and I'm like, no, it doesn't. It's like, no, it doesn't. You just don't know what you're doing. And I'm like, wow, you know, and I like talking to people about this kind of stuff sometimes. I don't know why that came up. I don't know why that conversation happened. When I talk to men, I present to myself very masculine. Just a heads up, I'm not. And it's funny because he's like, you're not like everyone else. I'm like, yeah, because I'm not trying to win your attention. I'm good, especially if you don't know where the clit is. I know where my clit is. I have no problem there, thank you. I don't need anyone else to experience that. So anyway, I just wanted to let you know that masturbation is totally okay. And it's a way that you can really start harnessing your own sexual energy, also your creative energy, right? I think a lot of people see, I don't know, I think if people, so I haven't had sex in 6 years. I haven't had sex since I was pregnant with Niall. And it was the very beginning of my pregnancy. I found out that I was being cheated on. I ran away to my hometown for a couple weeks, and I came back and I never had sex again. Like, I didn't have sex while I was away either. But like, so that was, now I was 5, so that was about 6 years ago. And I've been utilizing all of my sexual energy to create 3D reality, right? And so I want you to know that if you're having sex with any bad intentions, or you're using it as a coping mechanism, or you're addicted to it, whatever it is, whatever sex you're having, whatever form you're, you know, if you're jacking off in front of porn, that's also a form of, yeah. When you start to free your mind and come into consciousness, you start to think, right? And that's something that we used to tell women when we were doing the pure romance parties, is like, the number one sex organ for women specifically is their brain. And that's why foreplay is a thing, right? If you can't get a woman to, you know, feel into it, like thinking into it, you're not gonna have a good sex experience, right? Also want to talk about lubes. If you're using lubes, I highly suggest coconut oil, versus, you know, this P. Diddy baby oil shit. That's fucking gnarly. It's not good for women's hygiene. Coconut oil is super safe, and you should use that. And I would recommend that, because I used to sell lubes when I was working for the people, and they were always so sticky. So I really recommend just use coconut oil. It's really good for you. It's antibacterial, and it works really good. So use that. But ultimately, if you're having sex just because you feel like you should be, I think you should take a break. You should take a break, and you should explore what you like with yourself, you know, whatever that looks like to you. But really try and do it without anyone else, and really start to recognize how sacred your energy is, your orgasms are, and also honor yourself when you feel like you want to do it or need to do it. Instead of calling someone, just do it with yourself, right? Ultimately, when you have sex with bad intentions, and usually it's subconsciously, usually it's filling a void, just like any other sort of addiction or need, right? Primal need, right? But if you're doing things like that, it can really affect karma, and it can affect your cords. It can affect your entire aura and your energy, not to mention, not even talking about any STDs or anything, but just energy exchanges. If you're doing it from a place of lack, place of need, place of desire, but like in an unhealthy way, if you're a man and you're putting all of that into a woman, she feels that. I need you to understand that. We feel that. Whether subconsciously, it depends on the, you know, level of consciousness of the person. But just remember that sex is a sacred energy exchange, and it's not, the society has really made it into just like any other thing, like going to a football game and shit. It's made it so common and so necessary. But like, really, when you start coming into contact, and this is all part of decolonizing. This is decolonizing that I've never seen people talk. Well, I have. Now I have, because a lot of women are sharing their stories about celibacy, myself included. I can't imagine opening my body up to another person on a whim. At this point, I can't, I would never. I think the only time I would choose to open my body up is after an extensive, like, building, you know, like I wouldn't be able to have like random casual sex. Sex is not casual. It is the most sacred energy exchange, right? And I think that when we start to really remember that, and start to engage in it differently, you can really manifest shit. You can have orgasms together. You can literally reach other dimensions of existence if you're having sacred ass sex, right? And so I just want to get on here and tell you, if your sex life is lame, and really it feels like something you have to keep engaging in, I would suggest taking a minute and figuring out just with yourself what you like, and do that without any external, like, focus on your mind. Sex sells. Sex is a huge way that the powers that be control you, as we're seeing again these celebrities and these freak offs and the children that they're, you know, these pedophiles and the human trafficking. Think about that. Think about that. Think about what goes into the porn that you're watching, because those women are more than likely not doing that voluntarily. I need to keep it super real with you. And think about the way that they're degraded, and think about the woman that you came out of, you know? You came out of a woman. Women are sacred, right? We're killing the patriarch over here. Matriarch is where it's at. So just remember all of that. And it doesn't, again, it doesn't matter your sexuality, your gender, your amount of partners, whatever. It doesn't matter, as long as you can get to a place where you're recognizing that you're gonna have way better sex when you get to a place of recognizing how sacred of an activity it is, okay? And if you need to take a few years off, or a couple months or weeks or whatever it is for you, highly suggest doing that. Toys exist for all sexes. If you want anything, let me know. I have a woman from Pure Romance I'll hook you up with. She's actually over on TikTok. She sells shit. She does lives. Melissa Messenger. That's who I was working under. She's like a millionaire, from selling dildos and shit. Not just dildos. But yeah. Think about that. I don't know if I'm ever going to talk about this again. I guess I'll let you know when I start having sex again. No, I'm kidding. Alright, have a good one.